What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning into the Local Crown podcast, where we're going to teach you how to wage war on your competition and earn your local crown, also known as the top spot on Google. What are the steps that you usually go through with helping people figure out what they want and then setting some goals in accordance to that?
Yeah, the first is really zooming out. So speaking to business owners specifically, but it's true for everybody, is you get a lot of people to say, I want 7 figures. I want a 7-figure business. I want an 8-figure business. I want to have an impact. And the reality is none of those are like solvable problems, right? And it's not really what we want. And this is, you probably have a ton of background in sales, right? Like what does that represent to you? So it really is like, what do you want your life to look like? I just keep circling back. What do you want your life to look like? What do you want your life to look like? What do you want your life to look like? Because if we can't get, and I'll tell you what a lot of business owners do, and people in general, they don't define success. And that's what we're really trying to do is like, what does your ideal life look like? And they say, I have a 7-figure business. Like, no, that's not what your life looks like, right? But the reason they don't get granular, say, in a perfect world, I would sleep in till 7 or 8. I'd wake up whenever I want. My wife would never have to work again, and I'd be home every day for dinner as long as till my kids are through high school. Like something like that granular. And people don't define it because when you define success, you effectively also define failure, right? So as long as your wife is not retired, as long as you're not home by 5 p.m., and as long as your alarm's going off at 5 a.m., you're a failure. And so we start hiding behind, but look at my car, look what kind of cars I have, look how many employees I have, look at my Stripe screenshot. And so the first process is really getting clear on what do you want your life to look like. And that takes a long, it seems super simple. It takes a really long time for people to reason through that. So that's step 1. It really is. And then step 2 is being hyper aware of business decisions and where you put your time and money. And what I mean by that is you might say, look, my number one, what I really want is 10 more hours a week to spend with my family, right? We have to have checkpoints. Daily is probably too often, maybe weekly, monthly, depending on what it is. Because we might say, hey, look, we got 3 hours back. And instead of spending with your family, you filled it with more work. So is that really your priority? It sometimes takes months for people to figure out what they actually want. Because we're just so inundated with like Facebook and Instagram and now Clubhouse and all that crap. So it is identify, get clear on what you think you want, right? And then have feedback loops. So, hey, you said you wanted more free time, but when you had an opportunity to get more free time, you filled it up with more work. So what do you really want? You said you wanted to pay off your mortgage, and that'd be a huge weight off your shoulder. But when you made a bunch of extra money, you went on vacation instead. Right? It's really tough for people. Most people avoid this, but that's without that, it's my job and Dan's job and your job, I'm sure, to solve people's problems. But if they're not being honest about the variables, right? It's a multivariable equation, then it's just not a solvable problem. And so that's where it starts for me.
Absolutely, man. And you're right. And most people really have a hard time stepping back and looking at themselves like that. Like, I'm actually kind of curious. I know you've talked to a lot of high-level people and you've done this with a lot of people. What do you think it is that makes people so scared to step back and look at themselves?
Oh, so many things. So many things. The first is there's some level of, look, you don't get to a high level if you're not a little messed up, came up through poverty, have been abused, have severe depression. Like the highest, I've never met a high level person that hasn't been through like one of 4 traumatic events. Right. Yeah. And So on the other end of that, there's just a lot to prove. There's a lot to prove to yourself. There's a lot to prove to other people. And if you're busy proving stuff to, the teacher that failed you, or your mom or your dad or your 8-year-old self, if you step out and say, hey, what do I actually really want now that I'm a full-grown adult and can make good decisions? You have to let go of that identity. And in my opinion, that's the thing people cling on to, is they kind of hold on to, it's like their chew toy, right? Their identity. I have met people, and this might resonate with some, and some may not get it yet. But if I say it now, I'm sure years from now, they'll recognize this. I've had a number of people that fund all their priorities. They're living the life they want. Everything is great. And they feel guilty that it's so easy. And they're literally like, look, I'm happy. I'm content. I have everything I want. It's killed my drive to push harder. And they consider that a bad thing, right? Which means somewhere in their belief system, I need to punish myself and drive really hard is one of their beliefs. It's not necessarily toward a goal. It's just you reach all your goals and you're still stepping back going, man, I don't have a drive to do stuff. That's I think the reason people won't let go is they kind of that identity of a hustler or a grinder or a deal maker. And if you actually define your goals and reach them, and you're content and you're happy, then there's a conflict. On one hand, you reach all your goals, and on the other hand, you have a belief that you need to go make deals and hustle and grind. Just got to step back and reprioritize again.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something. If you have questions, email us at info@thelocalcrown.com. And if you want to get featured in our publication Inside the Empire, alongside John Lee Dumas, the entrepreneur on fire, Jayson Waller, the CEO of Power Home Solar, Sharon Lechter, Dan Caldwell, the man that started Tap Out, and the limitless man himself, Jim Kwik, for free, then head over to thelocalcrown.com/become a contributor.